Seat her by the kitchen. She won't know the difference. The wedding planner handed me the seating chart with an apologetic smile, the kind people give when they already know something is wrong and don't want to be the one who has to say it out loud. I found my name near the bottom of table 19, tucked against the double doors that led straight into the kitchen. Every time a server pushed through, a blast of steam and clattering trays would hit our table like a small storm. My daughter, Sophie, 11 years old and dressed in the pale blue dress she'd picked out herself for her cousin Vanessa's wedding, tugged at my sleeve. "Mom, why are we so far from everyone?" I didn't answer right away. I was still looking at the chart at my sister Claire's name at table 2, right beside the head table, right beside our parents, right beside Vanessa and her new husband's entire extended family. Claire had planned the seating chart herself. She told me so at the rehearsal dinner, proud of how she'd handled all the logistics so Vanessa didn't have to stress. "There must be a mix-up," I said to Sophie, keeping my voice light. "Let's go find your aunt." We found Claire by the gift table, radiant in emerald green, laughing with our cousin Derek about something I couldn't hear over the string quartet warming up. When she saw me approaching with the seating chart in my hand, something flickered across her face, not surprise, recognition. She'd known I would come find her. "Claire, I think there's an error. Sophie and I are at table 19, right by the kitchen doors." Claire didn't even glance at the chart. "That's not an error." "I'm sorry," she sighed, the particular sigh she'd been giving me since we were teenagers, the one that meant she found me exhausting. Look, I had to make some hard choices with limited space near the head table. Vanessa wanted her real family close, the people who've actually been part of her life. No offense, but you show up to maybe 2 family things a year. I figured you and Sophie wouldn't mind being closer to the kitchen. You won't know the difference anyway. It's not like you're used to fancy seating. A few people nearby had gone quiet. My cousin's wife, Priya, looked down at her drink. Derek suddenly found something fascinating on his phone. Nobody said anything. I felt Sophie's hand tighten in mine. She was old enough to understand exactly what had just been said. And young enough that it still landed like a slap. "Sophie doesn't know the difference between good seating and bad seating," I said quietly. "But she does know when someone is being unkind to her mother in front of her." Claire rolled her eyes. "Don't make this a whole thing. It's been Vanessa's day. Just go sit down. You're causing a scene." I wasn't causing anything. I was standing perfectly still holding a folded piece of cardstock next to my 11-year-old daughter. But that had always been how it worked in my family. If you didn't smile and swallow it, you were the one causing a scene. "Come on, sweetheart," I told Sophie. "Let's go sit down." We walked to table 19. The kitchen door swung open behind us every few minutes for the rest of dinner. Steam curling past our shoulders, the noise of the kitchen staff shouting orders bleeding into every conversation we tried to have. Sophie picked at her chicken and didn't say much. I made small talk with the 2 elderly guests at our table, distant cousins of the groom who didn't know any of us and seemed faintly embarrassed to be seated with the family's obvious afterthought. I want to be honest about something. What Claire didn't know, what almost none of my family knew, was that I hadn't shown up to family things in 3 years, not because I was too busy building a small comfortable life on the margins the way they assumed. I'd been building something else entirely. 6 years ago, after my divorce, I'd left the corporate law job everyone in my family understood and respected, and moved into private lending. Not the glamorous kind people picture. The unglamorous, unglossy world of bridge loans and mezzanine financing for small and mid-sized companies that couldn't get what they needed from traditional banks. I'd started with a small fund for investors, myself included, and a lot of very late nights while Sophie slept down the hall. For years in, we'd grown into something the family had no idea existed. A lending firm with just under $200 million under management, specializing in exactly the kind of family-run businesses my relatives were so proud of. Including, as it happened, Hartwell Events Group, the company that had been contracted to cater and coordinate Vanessa's wedding. And including, more importantly, Belma Construction, the company owned by my brother-in-law, Marcus, Claire's husband, who had taken out a $2.3 million expansion loan 18 months earlier to build out his third commercial property. A loan that, as of 14 months ago, my firm had purchased and now held in full. Claire didn't manage Marcus's business finances. She'd never asked where his money came from, never asked whose signature was actually on the loan documents that had let them buy their lake house last summer. She just knew there was money, and money meant she got to sit at the head table while I sat by the kitchen. I hadn't planned to do anything with any of this. I want to be clear about that. I came to my niece's wedding intending to smile, eat cake, and go home. It was Claire's comment, delivered in front of my daughter and half the wedding party, that changed my mind. After dinner, while the DJ set up and Sophie went to find her cousins near the dance floor, I stepped outside onto the terrace and called my associate, Daniel, who managed our loan servicing team. I need you to pull the file on Belmont Construction. I said, Marcus Whitfield's loan. Everything okay? He's 90 days behind on the last 2 payments, correct? Let me check. A pause. The clicking of keys. Yes, 91 days, actually. We flagged it last month, but held off on formal notice because you asked us to give him some room, given the family connection. I'm rescinding that courtesy. I said, send the formal notice of default first thing Monday morning. Standard 30-day cure period, full documentation, nothing unusual, nothing personal, just standard protocol, same as we do for any other client. Understood. Anything else? Also pull the Hartwell events file. I want to know the terms of their line of credit and whether Marcus co-signed anything through Belmont as collateral for either company. 20 minutes later, Daniel called back. Marcus had, in fact, used a portion of Belmont's assets as collateral to help Vanessa's soon-to-be father-in-law secure additional credit for Hartwell Events, the very company running tonight's wedding. The families were more financially tangled than any of them realized. All of it resting on a foundation none of them had bothered to look at closely because it had never occurred to them that the quiet cousin who barely came to family things might be the one holding it up. I didn't do anything dramatic that night. I didn't stand up during the toasts and announce anything. I went back inside, danced with Sophie, watched Vanessa and her husband have their first dance and left before the bouquet toss, the way I always did. Monday morning the formal default notice went out through standard channels, the same letter any client would receive, cold, procedural, entirely correct. By Wednesday, Marcus was calling my office, not knowing yet that the woman who owned his loan and the cousin who sat by the kitchen were the same person because the loan had been purchased through our funds holding entity, a name with no trace of me on it. Daniel called me Thursday. He wants a meeting. Says he needs to understand his options before the cure period ends. Schedule it. I said. I'll take this one myself. Marcus walked into our conference room Friday afternoon in a suit that cost more than what I used to make in a month at my old law firm and stopped cold when he saw me sitting at the head of the table. You, he said. Me. I agreed. Please sit down. It took him a long moment. This is insane. You're the one who's been servicing my loan this whole time. For 14 months. I said. I purchased the note as part of a portfolio acquisition. It was never personal until Saturday night. His jaw tightened. This is about the seating chart. This is about my daughter standing next to a kitchen door listening to her mother be told she wouldn't know the difference between good treatment and bad. That's what this is about. Your business is a separate matter and I'll handle it the way I handle every account according to the terms of the contract you signed. You're in default. You have 26 days remaining in your cure period. I suggest you use them. Claire didn't mean anything by it. She meant every word of it. I said, and so did everyone at that table who said nothing while she said it. He tried a few more angles, reminded me we were family, reminded me Vanessa's wedding depended in part on Hartwell's line of credit, which was itself tied to Belmont's collateral. Reminded me that pulling any of it could unravel a lot more than just his company. I let him finish. I'm not interested in unraveling anything, I said. I'm interested in being repaid according to the terms you agreed to. That's not cruelty, Marcus. That's the job. If you cure the default within your remaining window, plus applicable late fees, your account returns to good standing, same as before. If you don't, we proceed exactly as we would with anyone else. I've extended informal courtesies to this account for a year based on nothing but goodwill toward family I apparently don't need to extend that goodwill toward. That ends today. He left without another word. The next 3 weeks were quiet on the surface. Claire called twice. I didn't answer. My mother called once, asking if I'd heard Marcus was under some kind of financial stress, wondering if I could talk to my contacts and help him out, unaware the contact was me. I told her I didn't know anything about it, which was, strictly speaking, the last lie I told anyone in that family. Marcus cured the default on day 24, wiring the full amount plus fees. I confirmed receipt through Daniel and had the account flagged for standard review going forward. No special treatment, no exceptions, exactly like every other client on our books. Claire showed up at my apartment on a Tuesday evening in October, 3 weeks after the wedding, without calling first. Sophie was doing homework at the kitchen table. I let Claire in anyway. Marcus told me everything, she said, standing in my small living room, looking around like she was seeing it clearly for the first time, the modest furniture, the second-hand bookshelf, the life she'd always assumed meant I was struggling. You own his loan. You've owned it for over a year. You could have told any of us. Why would I have told you? I asked. You never asked what I actually did for a living. You assumed. It was easier for you to assume I was the sister who never got it together than to ask a single real question about my life. I didn't know. You didn't want to know? I said. There's a difference, Claire. You've spent years deciding I wasn't worth curiosity, and then you told my daughter, in front of half our family, that she wouldn't know the difference between being treated well and being treated like an afterthought. She's 11. She knew the difference immediately. I could see it on her face. Claire's eyes filled, and for once I didn't feel the old urge to comfort her out of the discomfort of her own making. I'm sorry, she said. I mean it. I was cruel, and I didn't even think about it as cruelty. I thought I was just being practical about space. You were being practical about who mattered enough to sit close. I said. That's not the same thing. She nodded slowly, wiping her face. Is Marcus's business going to be okay? His business is fine, as long as he makes his payments. That was never in question. What was in question was whether I was going to keep pretending I didn't see what you all really thought of me and my daughter. I'm done pretending that. She left an hour later after a long, difficult, mostly honest conversation. The first one we'd had in years that wasn't performance. I don't know yet whether things between us will really change. Some habits, some assumptions run deeper than a single hard conversation can fix. That night after Claire left, I made grilled cheese for dinner because it was Sophie's favorite and neither of us felt like cooking anything complicated. We ate at the kitchen table, the same table where she does her homework in the apartment my family has always quietly pitied me for. Are you and Aunt Claire okay now? Sophie asked. We're working on it, I said honestly. She was really mean at the wedding. She was, I agreed, and you were right to notice that. Don't ever let anyone convince you that you didn't see what you clearly saw just because they said it with a smile. Sophie considered this with the particular seriousness of an 11-year-old working something important out. Are we ever going to sit by the kitchen again? I thought about the quiet, unglamorous years of building something no one in my family had bothered to ask about. The late nights, the small fun that had grown into something real while they assumed I was simply falling behind. I thought about how easy it would have been to announce all of it that night on the terrace, to make it loud and satisfying and immediate, and how much more it meant that I hadn't needed to. No, sweetheart, I said, we're not sitting by the kitchen again, but not because anyone owes us the good seats. Because we already know exactly where we stand whether they seat us there or not. She smiled and went back to her sandwich, already moving on the way children do, already lighter than she'd been 3 weeks earlier. Some people spend their whole lives assuming that quiet means small. It took my family a long time to learn that the quietest person at the table is sometimes the one holding it up. If you like this one, then watch the next one. You will surely like this one, too.